Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to today's live stream. Joining me today is our guest, James Sowers. Hey, James.
Hey, Tyler. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Hey, man. I'm really excited to dive in today. So, if you're a regular viewer of our live streams, then you will notice this is a little bit of a different format. Today's live stream is actually sort of a free preview of middle of the funnel. So, if you're a member of Tofu, then you're probably familiar with all the content and the content library we have there. We also have a subscription tier called Middle of the Funnel. Middle of the Funnel, or MOFU, is really built to help freelancers and agency owners and solopreneurs figure out how to build, scale, grow their businesses, especially around content marketing and SEO, but not exclusively. And so today, our guest, James, here is the owner of the course Productize and Scale. And the course is really sort of designed to help you figure out how to build a productized service business. And so we're going to dive into the idea of, what is a productized service? How does it work? What does it look like? All those types of things. And so before we get too far into this, I just want to say, first of all, drop a comment in the chat. Let us know who's here. Hello. We'd love to say hi to you. Second of all, this is a live Q&A. So really what we're looking for today is we'd love to hear your questions about challenges that you're dealing with your business, productizing, systems, operations, behind the scenes stuff. I think that's all really in the wheelhouse of James and the Productize and Scale course. Real quick, a couple of links I'll share with you all before we get into it. Number one, the course that I mentioned that James owns is called Productize and Scale. You can find that at productizeandscale.com. This course is normally $299, I believe. Is that right, James?
Yeah. It's been as high as $499. Right now, it's running at about $299. Yeah.
And here's the cool part: if you are a member of MOFU, you can get free access to this course. So it is currently in the MOFU resource library for members only. So if you'd like to check out MOFU, if you enjoyed today's Q&A, we have these every month. And then in addition to that, we've got a resource library with I think we're at over $4,000 worth of resources in there that you're going to get access to for a much lower monthly fee. So yeah, check that out, bit.ly/GoMofu. You can check out kind of what all is inside there, what all is included as a member of MOFU. We'd love to have you. But yeah, this is kind of a little free preview, sneak peek, if you will, of what it's like behind the scenes. All right. Well, James, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to dive into this topic because I think this is something that I've been sort of increasingly interested in and sort of a supporter of in general. So let's just start at the beginning. Like, let's say I didn't know anything about productization as sort of a strategy. How would you kind of define it?
Yeah. Okay. Let me get into that. First, if you're here and you're listening, on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with productized services as a concept, right? Let's call 5 like you're an expert. You've been following my website or somebody else's website for a long time. Maybe you have a productized service. And then let's call 1 like this is the first time you've heard this term, or the first time you saw an email from Tyler about this event. That was the first time you heard about this concept, and you're a total newbie, right? So 1 is on the lower end of the scale, 5 is on the higher end of the scale. Drop something in the chat, leave a comment, whatever, so that I can get a feel for like what the familiarity is in the crowd that's here today. So I can kind of align my recommendations around that. But in general, productized services is a concept where if you think about the typical freelance or agency model, it's a lot of hourly billing, it's a lot of custom quoting, it's a lot of bespoke service. And that's great, right? Because your clients feel really taken care of. They feel like you're creatively thinking about solutions for their specific problems. And it often generates really strong results, right? If you're good at what you do and you customize it to your client's needs, then you get good results. And that's word of mouth, and that's referrals, that's client retention, all the things that we're aiming for, right? So what the productized service model does is it tries to find the pieces of that are broadly applicable to the vast majority of your client catalog and pull them out and kind of package them up neatly as a repeatable service that you do for a flat rate. So I like to think about the concept of productization as a lot of people call it like a light switch, right? You're either productized or you're not. And I think that's a misguided belief, right? I think it's more like a volume dial. You can dial up productization or you can dial it back down. And so on the lower end of that dial, you've got fully custom engagements, you've got hourly billing, you've got all these little things that are unique from client experience to client experience. Fully productized is, I think, Tyler, I think you use an example of ordering something from McDonald's, right? Like if you order something off the McDonald's value menu, you're getting exactly what it says there. You're getting a quarter pounder with cheese, fries, and a drink. That's it, right? So the fully productized experience is fixed price, fixed scope, fixed deliverables, and oftentimes a fixed timeline. So instead of like, I'm going to come in and build a custom content strategy for you, it's I'm going to map out uh, 90 days worth of content for $3,000. I'm going to turn around in 2 weeks and you're going to get an executive report with individual writing briefs for 12 pieces or whatever. It's down to that level. That's fully productized. So when we talk about those, we're talking about landing somewhere in between, right? Starting from square one of doing fully custom engagements all the way to fully productized. What's the right step for you to be in your business? And at a high level, that's kind of what we're thinking through.
I love that. And yeah, that was sort of a good analogy for me that was sort of a light bulb moment maybe a year or two ago when I really started exploring this topic was, yeah, the idea of a restaurant, right? So yeah, when you think of productization, you might think of McDonald's or fast food, sort of mass production, if you will. But really, when you think about it, as you said, it's really a spectrum. Every restaurant has some level of productization, right? Like they have a menu, there's specific dishes that you can order. Like you can't just like go into a restaurant and be like, make me a PB&J.
Right. Yeah. That's what the home chef is for, right? Then when you get to that level, you tell them what you want.
Yeah. There you go. That's the truly custom, like bespoke option. Yeah. So yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. And just in case you didn't see it, James, we had a couple folks who popped into the chat here. Both folks said that they are at a 3 out of 5. So sort of somewhere in the middle, sounds
right there
like
in the middle.
Generally familiar with productization, but maybe, not sort of deep in the weeds. What are some of the like the most important like components or like what really goes into like productization as a strategy or as a business model?
Yeah, I think it depends largely on your goals, right? And not to spoil something that we might talk about later, but I have a free resource to share with everybody today, right? And part of that describes how the vast majority of productized service businesses fall into one of two categories. There's like the productized solopreneur, right? I just want to earn the same amount of money but work a little bit less, right? Or have a little bit more predictability to my income. It's about independence and individual freedoms, right? The other model is a scalable service. So it's like, hey, I want to take what I do and I want to build this big team around it, but I don't know that I want to do like a true agency. I just want to have a big team that can like get the same results I'm getting from my clients. And I want to move into a visionary, a sales, a marketing, a client success type of role and kind of get out of the delivery. So they're really like two pathways. And I think depending on which one feels right for you, that's going to dictate like how you go from where you are today to where you want to be, because they're two totally different approaches, right? It's the same way with any startup business. Like if you want to do a venture-backed startup, you want to raise a bunch of money, then you're probably going to have to make that business worth $1 billion someday, or it's not going to be worth anybody's time financially, right? At the same time, you can start a software company and you can bootstrap it with your own funds, or you can raise some money from friends and family, and you don't have to have as big of a financial outcome or as big of a financial valuation to get a similar financial outcome for yourself, because you retain a lot of that ownership. So I guess I would start with saying, what's your goal, right? But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the parts of the activities that we do for, it's kind of like the 80-20 rule, right? Like if what are the 80% of tasks that we do, or sorry, what are the 20% of tasks we do that apply to like 80% of the clients that we serve? And can we carve those out as like a standalone offering and package those up neatly as something that can be bought independently? Because the other thing that a lot of people get wrong is they think that if I go productize, then I can't do custom projects anymore. And I don't know where that thought comes from, because like, of course you can, right? Of course you can. If somebody comes in and they buy your productized service and they say, well, I have this other special need or whatever, it's like, great. If you want to do that, here's an add-on service that we'll do as kind of a custom engagement. So you buy the core productized offering, and then there's a custom add-on that I do just for you. But you have that option, right? That's optionality. It's not like this a circuitous process of constantly putting together custom proposals and bids and throwing those out there and getting revisions back to those. Oh, we need to cross this line item out or whatever. It's not like that anymore. It's like, here's what I offer. And if it aligns with your needs, I'd love to have you as a client. If it doesn't, then, maybe we're not a good fit at this time, so.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think we can touch on this a little bit later, but I love that line of thinking right there. We get a lot of questions about this in Mofu and in Tofu of like basically, how do I find like the right buyers and how do I sort of better qualify leads and that kind of stuff? And that's one of the reasons why I love the idea of productization, is because you have like a very clear definition of like, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's who it's a good fit for. And it's very easy to identify if somebody doesn't sort of fit into that box. So that's one of the big benefits I want to dive into. But but before we get in there, I wanted to go back to, so we're talking a little bit about, there's different spectrums of productization. There's like different levels, and there's different goals. Can you maybe just give us some examples of, productized services, productized businesses that you've seen in the wild, that sort of real world examples?
Yeah. One popular example that people like to talk about is Design Pickle, right? I think they were one of the first movers in the productized service space before it really had much of a name or a phrase assigned to this business model. But
Hmm.
if anybody's not familiar, the concept is you pay a flat monthly fee for quote unquote unlimited design tasks, right, from a graphic designer. And you can submit tasks whenever you want, and there are a certain amount of things that they do. Like, I think at this point they pretty much do any kind of design project you're looking for that's actual graphic design, not video or anything, motion graphics or anything like that. But whether you need a web banner for your ad, or you need a new profile picture, or you need some supporting images or graphs or charts or whatever for a blog article, whatever you've got, you throw it into the queue and they'll work on them. The catch there is they only do one active project at a time, and that's how they protect their margin. It's not like truly unlimited that you can send them 16 things a day and they'll turn them around. It's like you can put 16, you could put 6D things in there every month, but they're only going to work on them one at a time, and they're going to get through as many as they can. So that's one of the examples, is basically this unlimited model, but you only have one or two active projects at any given time. The other one, that what I really like to see, and the one that I generally espouse or stand behind, is kind of this like fixed deliverable package with like a kind of a starter, a growth, and then a professional kind of tiered system to it. So it's like, if you just want the basics, if you're budget conscious, here are the 6 deliverables that we'll do for $1,500 a month. If you have a little bit bigger budget, or you have more sophisticated needs, here are the 10 deliverables we'll give you for $2,500 a month. And if you want the comprehensive package, if you want to be best in class, if you want to be tier 1 in this discipline, here's the professional package, and that's $6,000 a month or something like that. So in that way, it's a lot like buying SaaS. If you've bought Ahrefs, or if you've bought Asana or Todoist, like, they all have tiers just like that, and it unlocks different features at different levels. It's kind of the same concept. You're just applying it to a professional service instead of a digital product, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think, James, we were talking before the call about some of the, like, the specific examples. I think you mentioned like some case study companies and some other folks
Mhm.
that have sort of adopted some of these models.
Yeah, yeah. So in the content marketing space specifically, two examples that I love, and I know both of the founders personally. Maybe some of the folks in this room do. Case Study Buddy by Joel Kletke, amazing
Yeah.
dude, and Testimonial Hero by Sam Shepler. And those two are, I think they've come at it from different directions, and I might have some of these details wrong. So it's kind of immaterial, but I think Testimonial Hero started as video case studies. So we'll do the video recording remotely for you and interview your clients and produce some really compelling video case studies. Case Study Buddy started as written case studies. So we'll interview the clients, but then we'll go write those actual like editorial style, journalistic, almost narrative case studies for you. And now they've kind of converged, and Testimonial Hero does written also, and Case Study Buddy does video also. And so I just love the like Nike and Adidas kind of dynamic there. And I think those two guys are actually very cordial with each other, but competition is healthy, right? Like, a rising tide lifts all boats and all that kind of stuff. So I love that case study example though, because that's one of those things that like so many organizations know that they should be doing. They should be disciplined
Hmm.
about it. But there are a lot of hurdles to get over in terms of actually making that happen, and making that happen on a consistent basis. There's, hey, our clients, like, they're hard to get on the phone, or we do interview them, but it's like universally glowing and it doesn't feel authentic. I just don't think they're comfortable sharing with me because I worked on the account, or I represent the organization or whatever. So like, having that unbiased third party to come in and facilitate all that can really go a long way in both helping you do it consistently and get out 2-3 case studies a quarter or whatever the case may be, but also getting the actual good material and extracting that from the client, because they feel like they're in a safe space to share both the
Mm.
constructive feedback and the wins, right? Because that's what makes an authentic case study. If it's universally good, people are going to start to, like, their spidey sense goes off, right? And they start to question some of the finer details. But case studies is one example. And then there are a couple other examples that I haven't really seen anybody do yet, but I would love to see somebody tackle these. One is kind of in line
Can,
with the case studies. So, oh, sorry.
can I just jump in for a second here,
Yeah.
James? I want to touch on something I think you just nailed, which I think is super important. So what I love about the case study examples is that having the process is just as important as the actual product, right? When you think
Yeah.
about a productized service business, a lot of times the value that you're selling to your customers is just having a proven system for doing a thing, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
how hard is it to get case studies if you work in a company, right? as you said, it's a huge pain in the ass. People don't do it as often as they should. There's all these barriers to like getting case studies. So just to hire somebody who says, hey, look, I've got a system. I know exactly how it's going to go. We're going to go from step A to step B to step C, and we're going to come out with a case study at the end. That in and of itself is so valuable, right?
Right. Yeah.
We think about the creative work, the output, right? Which of course is important. Like we want the case study to be good. We want it to be well written. All those things are important, but just having a system, having a process in and of itself, again, it doesn't cheapen the service. It makes it better. It makes it more valuable to the customer that you're selling to, which I think is a huge important point.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, I think that's one of the mental shifts that freelancers need to make, especially in the content marketing space. I don't know if there are any parents out there, but like you have this in parenting where there are these milestone moments where, for a long time you have a new baby and it's just kind of like existing there, right? And you're just keeping it alive. And there's not a lot of like two-way communication feedback. They know you're there, but like they don't know how to smile at you yet or coo at you yet or whatever, like react in those very early days. But the first time they do, you're like, yes, this is actually a human that like I can get feedback from, and I know when I'm doing something right, and I know when I'm not doing something right. Like that's kind of an unlock moment. And then there are more that come later, right? So, all of a sudden they're big enough to start running around, and now we can actually like play together in a physical way that's not just like, let me jingle this thing in front of you, and you know what I mean? So those things happen. And I think something similar has to happen with freelancers where clients want you to be the authority, right? And if you're good at what you do, one of the best skills you can have or competencies or whatever is that confidence. Like squash the imposter syndrome and say, I'm the authority in this space. I have the work product to prove it. I have the experience to prove it. And I think if you do some quiet reflection and you think about your best clients and your most challenging clients, your best clients are often the people who are willing to come in and lean on you as the expert and say, James, tell me what to do here, right? Like I read your case studies. I've seen your portfolio. I like what I see. I want you to do that for me. Tell me what I need to do to enable you to make that happen. Those are the best clients. The worst clients are the ones who already have an answer and they're saying, hey, James, I just need somebody to do this for me, right? I just need you to come in and execute my plan, right? Because somebody inside my organization or whatever isn't doing it right or isn't available. Those are often the problem clients. And so I think what you're alluding to there is like, when you get into this productized system, you've basically communicated to the world that like, I have solved this problem, right? I've solved it in a way that I can replicate the same results client after client, project after project, and I have a system in my back pocket that I'm ready to deploy in the right situation. And so then it becomes less about like, hey, do I think that James has the right solution for me? It's like, he's shown me that he has the right solution. What we have to figure out is my situation correct for that solution? Am I ready? Like, do I have the right ecosystems and things and activity going on to make that a worthwhile investment? And can I afford it? And it just accelerates the sales process in that way, right? It's less about, do you know what I need to do? It's like, I know you know what I need to do. Can I afford you? And is now the right time to do it?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I think going back to the idea of, qualifying or disqualifying, it makes that process so easy, right? Again, I've got a prescribed solution. If your problem fits in here, like then we've got the solution already sorted. And then, one of the other biggest challenges, gosh, so many people have asked, how do I quit being an order taker? How do I quit, working for clients that, just, treat me like a cog and, they're telling me what to do and, they pay me like crap, all those things that you go through, right, as a freelancer. And having that established system, having a process and saying like, hey, look, this is what I do. This is how I do it. Take it or leave it. That approach, I think, it solves a lot of those challenges that we run into as freelancers or solopreneurs or agency owners, even in some cases, right?
Yeah, I think that's another one of those mental unlocks that you need to get to at some point is, people might be familiar with this acronym BOTNA, right? The best alternative to a negotiated agreement, right? And the concept there is like, if we're negotiating terms, I'm trying to buy a house or whatever, if my alternative to us coming to an agreement is like, it's fine, I can just buy another house, you don't have a whole lot of leverage over me, right? Like, I'm happy to just walk away. So I think the mindset shift that a lot of freelancers and agency owners need to go through is you need to get to this place of comfort or peace of mind, and part of this is confidence, but parts of this is also abundance, right? Remind yourself that like there's something like 8 billion people in the world, right? and if all you need to do is find 10 to have an independent freelance practice that is just thriving, and so I understand balancing the need for income in the short term and your long-term goals or whatever. But if you're in a place where you can say no to somebody and not lose sleep over it, freelancing gets a hell of a lot easier at that point, right? And I think that the productized service model can be a natural filter or qualifier for some of that stuff. And it's like, hey, if your specific challenge, your scenario, prospective client doesn't align with the solution, that's okay. But I've found out that this works for the vast majority of people, and this is what I'm willing to offer right now. And being able to walk away from that, you'd be surprised how many people say, well, you know what, all that special stuff that I thought was unique to me, it's really not that important. I'll buy your product, right? And then if I still need to find somebody to pick up that last 10 or 20% that I think needs addressed after we're done, then I'll go find somebody else to do that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Real quick, I just want to turn our attention to the audience here. Hello, folks. First of all, we've got four folks who have popped into the chat so far: Sean, Tamara, Heather, Chavi. Thank you so much. If you haven't yet, pop into the chat. Let us know who's here. Also, a quick reminder that this is a live Q&A, so we are taking your questions. So as we're discussing productizing your business, that type of thing, if you have questions, you want to have us offer any feedback on specific challenges that maybe you're facing, questions you have, whatever it is, pop those in the chat. We will get James's take on those. And second of all, I just want to mention once again, so if you want to learn more about James's course, Productize and Scale, you can check that out here at the productizeandscale.com. He's also, there's, testimonials and all kinds of content and stuff about folks who have embarked on a productization process or a journey, if you will. And, you can get some ideas about what their business looks like, kind of how they have implemented some of these systems. And finally, I will mention once again, Mofu. So again, this is sort of a free preview of our monthly Q&As that we host inside the Mofu tier here. So if you're interested in this kind of content, if this stuff is valuable to you, check out Mofu, bit.ly/go Mofu. You can become a member today. As I mentioned, the Productize and Scale course is available for free for all members of Mofu. So if you are interested in that Productize and Scale course, that's a good way to get your hands on it as well. Cool. Let's see. So I know, James, I don't want to lose the thread, by the way. I know you had some ideas for productized service businesses. What a bonus that we're going to get into.
Yeah.
But real quick, so Great Dorlin says, great session so far. Thanks for joining from top of the funnel. Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for being here. And Joe, hey, what's up, Joe? He says he has an idea, productized service for market research with keyword research at the core, using my SEO background. Your hot takes. What do you think about that idea, James?
Yeah, interesting. So in my mind, I think market research and keyword research are kind of two separate problems to solve, but maybe it's just a terminology thing at this point. But what I do think, and what I have seen in the past is, and a lot of content agencies will provide like content planning, content strategy, keyword research as part of a bigger service, right? So we will plan it on the front end, and then we will deliver it on the back, and we'll actually write those articles for you. That's an interesting concept, because I think that one of the if we think about productizing your services like a stair step kind of model, one of the best things to do is, like, instead of trying to take everything you do and squeeze it into this tiny little box, just pick out one piece that's repeatable. And oftentimes that's the strategic work, that's the front end audit, that's the planning and strategy, that's the content mapping, whatever. I love kind of carving that out and saying, I'm going to offer that by itself as a productized offering, and all my other stuff can continue to be bespoke or whatever. But that's a great stair step there. Just productize a piece of it and see how it feels. Dip your toe in the water, right? And the other reason that I love doing content for that, or doing strategy for that, is because strategy is often the highest leverage time to compensation, time to value piece. And so if you can productize that, you can really dramatically increase your potential income ceiling without increasing the number of hours you have to spend at your keyboard going clickety clack, right? So to answer Joseph's specific example here, I love the idea of doing keyword research on the front end, and I would time box it. I would say, hey, here, I'm going to plan you a quarter's worth of topics and keywords to focus on, but you got to get down into what are the specific deliverables there, because that's where it gets messy, right? Are you delivering me like a spreadsheet of keywords with keyword difficulty or whatever? Or are you delivering me a writing brief for each one of those keywords with an outline of the H2s and H3s I should be covering, and maybe a few like backlinks that I could put in there, maybe a few internal links that I could put in there, right? Are you basically outlining that article for me? That is actually one of the ideas that I think would be really compelling, is if somebody would go out there and offer writing briefs as a service. Because I know, as
Mm.
somebody who recently left a position as a marketing director at an agency, I learned firsthand that the quality of articles I got back was directly tied to the quality of the writing brief I provided. And I was never one of those people who was just like, here's an empty Google Doc with a couple of keywords at the top, write me an article, right? But the more that I fleshed out the writing brief and got really intense, I mean, I'd be happy to share that template if you think it'd be valuable. But my writing brief by itself ended up being like 1,000 words. And maybe that's too much. The writers in the room might be like, no, 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 don't be that client, right? But I was like, I'm going to totally over deliver on this because I just want to give them every piece of raw material I possibly can to get the best product at the end of the day. And so it was down to the level of like, here is the target avatar I think we're speaking to. Here are their top 3 concerns. Here's the specific service or offering that we have that I want to make sure that we use as a CTA. It was like,
Mhm.
here are some competitor articles that we can like draw inspiration from, and you can backlink to these two, but maybe we're not as friendly with this one or whatever. So I was basically like giving them the blueprint for producing an excellent article to set them up for success. But that took a ton of time. And I probably did 1 to 2 hours personally on the writing brief piece. And I started to think like, damn, I should just get in and write the article at this point, right? Like, how many more
Right.
hours is it going to take me to just crank this thing out? And this was
Yeah.
before ChatGPT. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago. So ChatGPT wasn't a total like whale like it is now, and there weren't a bunch of these AI content tools. So maybe it'd be faster now, even more so, right? Even more so, maybe I should just jump in and write this myself in 3 or 4 hours. And we
Mhm.
can get into that because I have some perspectives on AI tools, but I'm sure this audience is probably tired of hearing everybody's unique take on that. But I guess I say all that to say the idea that I think would be great is writing briefs as a service for busy CMOs, busy marketing directors at smaller mid-sized agencies that like care about the content that they're putting out, but don't necessarily have the time they'd like to put into making it as good as it could be on the front end
Mm.
and equipping those writers to do an excellent job. So if you can be that fractional content strategist for them and you can do that work, I think that would sell really well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. A couple thoughts on that. So first of all, just to come back to Joe's question here, I mean, I think this seems like an interesting thing, Joe. I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of how you're envisioning this, but I think the key thing here, if we break this down right into components, and this also is going to tie into some of the questions that folks asked in the chat, which we will get to in just a moment. By the way, thank you for your questions. First of all, I think there's sort of 3 stages here, right? So the first one is like standardizing or productizing like the inputs. So like when I start this process, like what information do I need? What am I getting from my client or my customer or whatever that I need to sort of go through my actual workflow, right? So standardizing that input thing, I think is a key part of this. Standardizing the work itself, right? So obviously that's sort of central. I think that's what most people think of is like, I'm going to follow these exact steps. I'm going to go through this process. Now, you can't productize every single thing, right? If it's, a writing work, there's still some creativity in the middle somewhere in there, but you can still follow a similar set of steps. And then the third part in my mind is standardizing that output, right? And so I think those are I think people tend to think of that middle part, right? Productization is all about like that middle part, but it's really about the other parts that make it work, right? You've got to have a standard input, you've got to have a standard output so that you can define the steps that need to happen in the middle to transform that input into an output.
Yeah, and it's an evolutionary process, right? Like it's not, you don't go from fat to fit overnight. It takes time and you have stages, right? Where you're like, oh, I'm starting to see results, right? So it's like I'm getting better at systematizing and documenting the processes that I
Mhm.
do. I'm getting better at running because that's just a piece of it, right? Everybody loves to talk about documentation, but what does most documentation do? It goes into Notion and nobody reads it. Nobody touches it, right? Maybe the new hire comes in and reads it as part of their onboarding, but nobody is writing the next blog article and opens up Notion and says, let me make sure I'm going through the checklist one at a time, right? They just kind of wing it. It's like, great, we have documentation. We're an amazing agency. We're ready to scale, right? So like you have to actually use it. And when you get consistent about, identifying what you're doing, and a lot of people like say, I don't know, what I do is just so hard. I just can't systematize it. It's just so creative. And it's like, yes, there's truth to that, right? Some creative work is just very, very heady. It's like you're uniquely positioned to do it. I'm not advocating for you to productize that, but it's kind of like with a personal brand. Like some people say, I don't really have a personal brand. You do. Your personal brand is what everybody says about you when you're not
Yeah.
around. You just don't know what it is yet, right? Because you
Yeah.
haven't been intentional about building a personal brand. I would say you have a process for the work that you're doing. You're just not aware of it yet because your calendars are all over the place or whatever. You've never tried time tracking. I'm not a time tracker, but I think it's a really healthy exercise when you're trying to consider doing something like this. give it a week, track your time, or take an
Yeah.
individual project. And every time you open up that project to do a piece of it, write down real quick, 60 seconds, what did I do? Right. And as you start to document those over the course of a week, 2 weeks, something like that, you start to see, okay, I worked on 4 different client accounts this week. And like, I spent about an hour and a half in Ahrefs, and I ran these same 3 queries for all of them. Okay, ding, 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 right? Like I'm starting to understand the commonalities, the trends, and then
Mm.
eventually those things kind of morph into something that it's like, oh, these two Legos connect, right? Like these two puzzle pieces make sense, and then you start to build out that package. But it's all around like observation and awareness, right? Just like anything else. And so I think the first step is let me just be thoughtful about how I'm spending my time and how I'm approaching each client project. And then let me see where the overlap is. And then I got to
Mhm.
sanity check that a little bit, right? Like, sure, these things overlap, but like, was this step unnecessary for this client? Or was this one missing a step and I should have actually applied this? Then you start to figure out like that 80-20 solution. What is the one thing that I think would make 80%? You're never going to make everybody happy. But if you can get to a place where you can make 80% of the people who come through your door happy and get the results that they look for, then it's a great time to pull the trigger on like a productized offering.
Yeah, well, and I think that the 80-20 rule kind of applies too in terms of like, sort of how completely you can productize your service, right? So we mentioned sort of creative work, right? So I'm sure a lot of the folks on this call are, strategists or writers or whatever. I think there's always going to be some level of that kind of work, of creative work, that's like the magic, right? It's just like, I'm a writer and like I write and I write good words, right? But can you productize 80%? Can you get the, can you productize the outline and the first draft or whatever? And then like the 20% is like the final magic polish or whatever that you apply on it, that, hey, I can't really teach somebody else how to do this step by step, but I can get them 80% of the way there. And then I can apply that final polish, in 20% of the time instead of 100% of the time.
Yeah. And to use a specific example, okay, so let's say you are a unicorn and the way that you write articles is just the best and nobody can ever like replicate that. And that's fine. Like let's leave that there. So okay, so that's a portion of your practice where you do thought leadership style content, right? But back to a previous point, you can productize a piece of that process, which I bet is interviewing internal stakeholders or experts in the
Mm,
field or something like that. So productize that front end research piece and say, okay, are you a B2B SaaS organization that is seeing all this stuff with AI generated content and is worried about what's going to happen to your organic search? Like you want to separate yourself and actually have a unique point of view and perspective. All those insights are inside of your organization right now, but those people are too busy building product, talking to customers, speaking at conferences, writing books, whatever they're doing to put it onto your blog. Let me do that for you. And my magic
mm,
sauce is the actual writing of that article. But the productized piece is I'll come in and I'll interview head of product, I'll interview customer success, I'll interview sales, and I will extract those insights and then I'll translate them into articles that nobody else can replicate for you. So I productize that front end, $2,500, give you 2 weeks to interview them, whatever. That's the front piece. And then you can hire me to execute on that vision in a custom engagement.
mm. I love that, man. Yeah, so many good ideas here. So once again, drop your questions in the chat. Let's get to some of these questions that we've gotten so far. So Laurel says, I speak to a lot of business owners who believe they're so unique that they need something bespoke. It makes me feel like an employee, not a service. What are the issues to solve there? So I think we've just unpacked some of these questions. Sort of jumping ahead here. Any other final thoughts on that, James? Any other sort of tricks or solutions for when things feel too bespoke to productize?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best argument against that is a case study, right? Okay, great. Sam came to me with the same kind of concept. Let me tell you about why they thought they were so unique, and that my solution wouldn't address their needs. We talked through it. We actually ran through, and these are the results that they got. Right? If you have that in your back pocket, that would be amazing. That's the best like trump card that you can throw down for something like that. The other thing is like it kind of back to that whole point of like come at it from a position of abundance. Like I understand that you feel that this is not customized or tailored to your needs. If you're in a position where you really need the money, then you can balk at that, right? Like you could do that custom engagement. There's nobody saying that you can't, right? It's not like
Yeah.
you productize or bust, right? It's not like left, right, Republican, Democrat. It's not adversarial. It's a piece of your business puzzle. And maybe if you have a pie chart of your income, you want 60% of that to be productized and 30% of it to be custom and 10% of it to be coaching or advisory or whatever. Like that's fine. That's a healthy way to run a business. You don't have to go all in on productization.
Yeah.
But you can also stick to your guns and say it's just not a good fit right now. And as somebody who has done that, who has regretfully or like tentatively said, then I guess we're just not a good fit. I try to massage things. I try to explain why I think we can still get them the results. Of course, there are like guarantees and assurances and stuff like that, money back guarantees, whatever. But if that still doesn't work, I say, okay, I totally understand. If I can connect you with somebody who might be willing to do like a custom engagement for you, I'm happy to make that introduction. But you'd be surprised how many people come back 30, 60 days later and say, you know what, we still haven't addressed this. We haven't found somebody who's willing to do it for us. It fell on the back burner or whatever. And I'm willing to give it a try now. Sometimes patience is just the key and sticking to your guns. So I don't know that that's a lot of like clarity there, but I think it's about being intentional about which direction you want to head, and then being mindful of like what your current situation looks like. And if you are cash strapped, then take the custom engagement by all means. Don't shut it down just because James told you to productize. That's not what I'm trying to communicate here. I'm saying productized services can be a way to introduce more stability, more predictability, protect your time a little bit better. I think it's a tool in your toolbox that a lot of freelancers would do well to experiment with and incorporate. But I'm by no means coming in and saying it's a one size fits all approach. It's not right for everybody. And I'll say that up front.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I want to hit on real quick, James, you and I talked briefly about this before the call, which is that you don't necessarily have to market yourself as being a productized service business, right? Like
Right.
productization is as much about behind the scenes, the operations, how you actually execute the work, as it is communicating that. Like, not every business that is productized advertises themselves in that way. And again, go back to the restaurant example, right? You don't think of an expensive steakhouse as being productized, but there is a level of productization that's happening in the kitchen, right? And so I think I guess one solution here might just be like, hey, change the way that you're describing this. Make it
Mhm.
feel more bespoke, even if it's you have a proven system and a process that you're going to follow behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was saying in the the prep for this event or whatever, that like a lot of people want examples of productized services, and they think I have them, right? And I do. I have quite a few because I interview the founders or whatever, and they're in my communities and stuff like that. But like, it's not like it says productized service right on the homepage in the hero section. Like it's like an agency in a lot of regards, or it looks like a solo practice. It's really the back end, and it's the delivery mechanism, and it's the client experience after you buy that makes it a productized service. So to your point about like they want a bespoke solution, well, if part of your repeatable process is doing a front end audit and doing some kind of executive briefing, like that feels pretty bespoke to me. But it's a productized offering. It's like we do the audit, we do the executive briefing to submit our strategy or whatever, and then we do the execution piece. That's still bespoke, and the client doesn't know whether you productize or not. You don't even have to use that term. You just say, I have a process for doing this that has been proven. I have case studies, I have testimonials, I have results that show that this works. This is my process, and they want that confidence. And if the first two steps are audit or some kind of interview or diagnostic or whatever you want to call it, and then strategy, then functionally that's productized, but experientially that's bespoke. And that's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yep. Yeah, I think sort of breaking those bigger services down into smaller services that you can productize each one, and maybe they do have a separate deliverable or whatever. Again, yeah, it feels more bespoke, even though it's just as productized as if it was an end-to-end solution.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm trying to think. I think there was one more idea I had for specifically in a content marketing function, and I don't know your take on this, Tyler, but the content refresh concept, I think to me is
Mm.
so overlooked. It's just going back and identifying those pieces. Admittedly, this is one that's been on my like business ideas someday maybe kind of category. Like I'd love to do this someday because I just think it worked really well for us at the Good when I was the marketing director there. Just go find those pieces that were in the top 10 at some point and are now down closer to 15, 20, 25, and just give them a refresh, update them, add more links, add more data, flesh them out. That doesn't mean make them longer all the time, right? But make them better, make them more useful, optimize the headline, do some stuff. Like if you have a process around that and you go and pitch organizations of like, stop trying to write new content that's, whatever surface level AI generated to try to target these long tail keywords. Like you're already ranking for this. Let's just try to gain 5 spots and get 50, 500, whatever the keyword volume is, more clicks per month to your website. That's a better investment of your time, right? So I'd love to see somebody do content refreshes as a service.
Yeah, I love that idea as well. So James has another model here. So he's interested in productizing service around brand strategy and identity. Any thoughts on this, James? Any experience in this space?
Yeah. So this to me, this sounds like and James, feel free to comment or drop something in the chat if I'm off base here. But to me, it sounds like a little bit of brand work, a little bit of messaging work. It's really like how does this company present itself to the world? So there's probably a design component, but there's also like this creative direction component almost, and maybe there's a little piece of like not actual customer avatars, but like you're aligning all of this with like who you're trying to speak to and what's their vibe, and like are they gonna like funky and fresh, are they gonna like kind of buttoned up and professional, whatever, and then you're translating all that into like a style guide or design assets. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen this done. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have a domain, but I can. James, I got your name here in the chat, and if I find it, I'll reach out to you online somewhere. I'll find you. I'll do some smithing, well, some googling, and send it over. But I've definitely seen somebody do basically style guides as a service, and this is almost the reverse of what I was talking about earlier, where productize the strategy piece on the front end and then custom
Uh-huh.
delivery. I would flip that here. I would say, let's do a custom engagement to do that front end interview, creative thinking, put together. And then the productized backend is, okay, now you're going to need to translate that into a style guide that your team can use for the website, your marketing assets, whatever. Like that's the piece that feels pretty repeatable to me. Like you're going to need a logo, you're going to need a font selection, you're going to need a color palette, you're going to need whatever, different hierarchies and like a mood board or something like that. Obviously, I'm not an expert here, but that's the piece I would productize, and I would keep that front end, that strategy work, that consultation work, kind of bespoke and custom quote that.
It's interesting. I will say from my experience, so I worked for a branding agency for a while in my past life, and one of the things that actually stands out to me there is that a lot of the exercises and the research and like the thinking that goes into brand strategy, in my experience, actually lends itself really well to productization. So it's like, let's do a SWOT analysis, or like let's do like these very specific like exercises to try to like distill what we're looking for or what we want, or how we want to present ourselves. And to me, like that also feels like very productizable, right? Like, hey, we're going to put together a workshop or discovery process, and we're going to go through these 5 exercises. And that's, we're going to use those outputs. Again, it's all about the inputs and outputs in my mind of, to deliver the final deliverable. So yeah, I think it's interesting because yeah, you can sort of think about both sides of that process and how they might be productized.
Yeah, and a common term, if anybody's not familiar with it for that kind of engagement, is called road mapping. So if you do a quick Google of like
Mm,
road mapping session, road mapping project, something like that, that's a really tight productized deliverable. That's basically like some kind of interview or workshop. Sometimes I've done them before. Sometimes it's like half a day with the team and just asking a bunch of really smart questions, running them through some exercises or whatever to get all the raw material that you need. And then you go away for a week or two and you come back and you're like, here is the project roadmap. So to make this happen,
mm,
here are the stakeholders I'm going to have to interact with. And that's where you're kind of like the deliverable for the productized piece is the project roadmap. And the great thing about that is like, um, you know, the pitch there, or I guess the presentation there is like, okay, now you have the roadmap that you need for success. If you choose to work with me, I'll be happy to do that for you. And that's kind of a custom quote or an open-ended retainer
mhm.
or something like that. If you choose not to work with me, you still have this tangible asset that you can take and hand to the next person and they can just hit the ground running. So that's what I love about that is it gives the client like an easy out in either direction and they're getting value either way. But you really protect your time and your energy on that front end by productizing that piece. And then you're still free to custom quote or set up a retainer or something like that for the back end that does get a little bit messier, right? Like, I don't know exactly how long phase 1 of this roadmap that I mapped out is going to take, right? So let's do an hourly
Yeah.
billing type of thing there, or let's do a minimum spend and then let's leave some room for overages or something like that, right? So there are a bunch of different ways you can slice it. Like I said, productizing is just another tool in the toolkit. So deploy it at will. But some things are a better fit for productizing and some things are a better fit for custom quoting. There's no fault in going either direction or blending the two.
Mhm. Real quick before we move on to the next question, I want to hit on something that you just mentioned, which I don't think we've covered explicitly, but uh, are all productized services a flat fee?
No. I think that if you're going down to, like I said, it's a spectrum, right? So you might have like
Mhm,
um, fixed deliverables, but the scope and the pricing are a little bit different. So it's like, if you think
mhm,
about an article, or maybe an article is too simple, but let's say you have a website build or something like that, right? And so if the deliverables are like, I'm always going to do these 5 key pages: the homepage, services, about, contact, and something else I'm forgetting, right? So I'm going to always do those 5 pages, but the price is flexible depending on how complicated you want those to be or how many words are on that page, right? Or like, do you need
mm,
dynamic elements or is a static site okay? Or what platform am I working on? Am I working in Webflow? Am I working in WordPress? Am I working in custom design or something like that? Custom code. So it's like those pieces can be variable. But I will say one of the biggest benefits to productizing your service is literally putting the price on the website. And people get so like itchy when I say that, like put your prices out there like a menu. But I'm telling you, once you do that, you will, and again, this comes back to this central thread of like come at this from a place of confidence, a place of abundance, right? The people who see your price and don't buy from you, that's not a missed opportunity. That's a filter for a client that was probably a bad fit and would have wasted your time anyway. And I understand the scarcity mindset of like, I need more work now. I haven't hit my targets yet. That's okay. That's fine. You don't have to put your price on the website. But when you get to a point where you're feeling good about it, if you're on the fence about putting your price on your website, don't be. Put it out there. Let it be a natural filtering system for the clients, because the right ones will come to find you, or the ones who are close enough will at least get on the phone with you and say, hey, I saw your price was $5,000 a month. Like, I think I can stretch to 4, but I don't think I can make 5 work right now. Would you be willing to come down? And then you have the opportunity to say yes or no, or you could say, come back to me when you have 5 or whatever. But yeah, it's not always a fixed price, but often I think that's one of the biggest benefits to productizing, is being able to put a price out there and just
Mhm.
address that objection head on, because that's the most uncomfortable conversation that we have with clients a lot of times, is like, what's this going to cost me? I don't know. What's your budget? Well, what's it going to cost me? And it's like we do that dance back and forth. Like, let's put it all out on the table. I'm happy to do it for 5,000. Do you have 5,000? Yes, no. You know what I mean? Like, you don't go into McDonald's and haggle. You just that the price is the price, and you either can afford it, you want the burger bad enough, or you don't.
Right. And I think too, going back to that mindset shift, I think if you sort of work backwards from that point, right? So let's say you update your website tomorrow and you say, hey, every article I write is $1,000, right? Well, now the pressure is on you to build a system internally in which that's worth your time, right? If you get a bunch of clients that say, hey, I'll pay you $1,000 to write an article, but it's taking you 20 hours to write that article, well, maybe that's not a great deal for you. So now, again, you have to think about productization as the internal part of it, the operations part. How do I build a system for myself so that I can write effectively or efficiently enough that this becomes a much higher margin, more leveraged activity, right?
Yeah, it certainly works best if we think about like the delivery as kind of the back office and the marketing as the front office. It definitely works better if you go from the back office and solve the repeatable process first, and
Mm,
then productize it and put a sticker price on it and throw up a landing page, versus like, let me take a guess at what I'd be able to do 5
mm.
article refreshes a month for. Okay, I think I could get that done for $5,000. Let me land a client. Let me figure out how to deliver that. Oh shit, I lost money on this. Like, it's not the worst possible outcome, but it definitely works better if you're like, hey, let me sit down for 15 minutes and think about this intentionally. Okay, my average content refresh takes me 6 hours. My hourly rate is $100. Okay, that's $600 for that article. If I do 5 articles, that's $3,000. Okay, let me start at 3,000. Or maybe my recommendation is like, do your best guess and add 20% for margin, and just see what the market says to that. And if you land somebody at 20%, then you got that buffer, right? And if you go over on time or something like that, like, you're not left losing money to this or overworking yourself. It's like, okay, I think I could do it for 3,000. Add 20%. What would that be? 3,600. Okay, my price is 3,600 for whatever I said, 4 or 5 content refreshes a month. Let's start there and see if the market's willing to buy in at that, and see if I'm happy delivering at that. And everything's flexible, right? So many people think pricing is like this ledge you jump off of and you can never come back. Like, it's just a number on like, go into the website editor, go into Squarespace or whatever you're using, and just delete 3,000 and put 4,000. It's fine, And it's like, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I wasn't. That's something that we've done over the years. Is like I've always gotten some satisfaction out of going there and being like, okay, prices start at 10,000, now price start at 12,000,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah.
I
Uh,
understand the hesitation. The last thing I'll say about pricing is, like, if you're worried about putting a specific price out there, just put a minimum, right? Or
yeah.
put a range. Like, it's another one of those stair steps. It's another one of those dials. Like, you don't have to just put a flat price out there, but you can say, prices starting at $3,000 per month, or often between $3,000 and $5,000 per month. Something to just say, like, get somebody nodding, yes, I can afford this, or get them shaking their head, nope, not for me, I'm out of here, right? Like, that's what you want to do. That's a good thing to get people off the fence, because if they come in uncertain, you're having calls with them and it's like, well, what did I just waste the last 45 minutes giving you free consulting for? Like, you weren't even close, So you want to avoid
Yeah.
that.
1,000%. Yeah, I am a big fan of anything that sort of works as like an active disqualification mechanism. Like, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. Like,
Mhm.
if you if I can put the price up there and you can immediately balk at that, then that's going to save us both time and
Yeah,
energy.
for sure.
Cool, man. Well, hey, we are winding down to actually our last 10 minutes already, believe it or not. So I want to do a couple quick things here. First of all, I just want to mention once again, check out James's course, productizeandscale.com. Again, he's got a bunch of content on there. There's a newsletter. There's all kinds of stuff going on over at Productize and Scale. If you want to get your hands on the course, if you found this Q&A valuable and you want more content that's going to help you grow your business, whether you're a freelancer, an agency owner, somewhere in between. I would love to have you as a member of MoFu. Check that out, bit.ly/go MoFu. Once again, you will get free access to the Productize and Scale course. So if that's something that's interesting to you, that's one way that you're going to be able to get it. And James, why don't we talk real quick about the resource that you've created for folks as well? So James has put up a custom page for us at productizeandscale.com/optimist. What are they going to get? What are they going to find on this page, James?
Yeah. So I think I designed this resource with the intention that most people are coming to this event as like, I'm not sure if productizing is right for me. And so I'm trying to address that question head on and give you a resource guide that basically says, let's start with finding your why. Like what's broken in your business? What's suboptimal in your business today? What frustrates you? What pain points do you have? And then let's paint a picture of like, what does your ideal future state look like in the terms of your work life, your daily routines, your weekly routines, the types of projects you work on, the types of clients you have. So let's paint the picture of here I am today. Here's what I'm frustrated with. Here's where I'm trying to go. Is productization a way to kind of get you from A to B? And what does that action plan look like? That's what this resource is all about. So there's a little bit of education in there about what's important when you're thinking about where you're trying to take your business in the future. A couple of examples of those productized service models that I talked about: the solo consultancy, the productized solopreneur, and the scaled productized agency. So we talk a little bit about that and share some real world examples. Now on the back end, we got a worksheet that walks you through a handful of really thoughtful and intentional questions to think about where you're trying to take your business. And then if you complete all of the worksheet, which you can take as long or spend as much time or as little time as you'd like to do it, I just want you to give it an intentional effort if you're going to do it. But on the landing page that Tyler put up, you'll see you can also book a one-on-one coaching call with me. And if you've completed the worksheet and you send it to me, either as a URL link upload on the booking form or email it to me directly, then I'll do a free coaching call with you and we could talk through what productization might look like for your service and how we get you to where you're trying to be in the future 6-12 months from now.
Love that, James. Thank you so much for this awesome offer. So yeah, folks, if you didn't catch that, productizeandscale.com/optimist. There's a free sort of self-assessment there, and then you can also use that to book a free coaching call with James and talk about productizing your service. So yeah, tons of value there. Really quick, we do have a couple questions left in the chat, so I want to get to those. Before we do that, though, I wanted to hit on that point that you just mentioned. So what are some of the common pain points that people have that sort of lead to, or productization solves for them?
Yeah. So I think one of them is, trading time for money. That's the existential concern of pretty much every freelancer and service provider is I want to break free from that someday, right? So productization helps with that because you get the same amount of money for ideally less time because the processes are repeatable, they're standardized, so you can do them faster and you can maintain quality that way, or you can contract them out and get more help doing them, right? But you can understand that it's going to be done at the same level because it's all written down with screenshots or whatever. That's part of the allure. The other part is, in some cases, it could be more stable revenue because a lot of productized services tend to be monthly recurring revenue. They tend to be recurring services. So keyword research would be a great one. Maybe it's not monthly, maybe it's quarterly. Podcasting is a great one. Video editing, the things that people do over and over and over again. It's much easier to sell those in a productized service model, almost like a subscription, right? Like a Netflix subscription or whatever. It's like, yeah, I just subscribe to Tyler's writing service and he throws me 4 awesome blog posts a month and I don't have to think about anything. So you get predictability, you start to operate more like a software company there, and you get off that hamster wheel of like constantly hunting down new leads and sending pitches over, and just I don't know, protect your sanity a little bit there because like it's hard to take denial if things aren't going well, right? It's hard to show up every day and do that on a consistent basis instead of just looking for work when you need it, those kinds of things. And then I think one of the other benefits is you get to serve clients in a way that everybody's more aligned, right? So the expectations are all kind of literally on paper in some ways. And it's like, that the service includes this. I know that the service includes this. We both know that if you want anything outside of this, like it's optional for me, right? Because this is what we've established as kind of the operating system that we're going to work through collectively. So all of those like frequent customer touch points that you might have with custom engagements, like, hey, I wanted to make a little adjustment here. Like, sorry, we don't do that. Like it's a productized service. This is what we do. There is no adjustment of scope right now. So it really cuts down on like the customer support, the client support type of thing. It really cuts down on like friction from misaligned expectations, or somebody didn't describe this quite correctly, or I was picturing this differently in my mind. All those things get reduced. And what that translates to on the back end is a better client experience, often better results for your clients, better client retention, and more word of mouth referrals. Like all those things that you want from a perfect client engagement happen more frequently when you use a repeatable model like productized services.
Yeah. Oh my God. You just hit on such an interesting insight, which is that like I think so much of those like client friction moments and the miscommunications and client wants this and I wasn't planning to deliver that, or it's out of scope or whatever, and now I got to fight with my client about it. It comes down to the fact that we generally sell things in very generic terms, right? It's like it's like you sell a blog post or blog writing, right? So to me that means one thing, to you it means something else, to your client it means something totally different, right? It's just like if you're like, hey, I want a hamburger, that is totally different than if I want a McDonald's hamburger or a Arby's hamburger, whatever it is, right? And so productizing, I think, is just like take that idea of like, hey, I write blog posts, and instead of that say, hey, I sell blog posts by Heather, and this is how those happen, right? That type of thinking where it literally is like transforming a service into a product. I don't, that
Yeah,
might be overly literal, maybe that's obvious to everyone else, but that sort of was a light bulb for me just now.
I think it's just at the end of the day, it comes down to clarity, right? It comes down to clarity about what you're delivering and what they're expecting you to deliver, and alignment between the two parties involved or however many people are involved. It's like if there's no ambiguity there, then life's just better, right? It's like
Yeah.
communication and clarity are very, whether you're talking about a marital relationship or best friends or whatever you've got going on, like communication and clarity and alignment are bliss. And if you can make that happen more effectively by switching up your business model a little bit, then why wouldn't you, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So jumping into the questions here. So Heather asks, so she says, as a long form content writer, I find that there can be a lot of variables with what clients want. So sort of just what we were talking about, right? Different clients have different expectations. If you say you write blog articles, that means one thing to me, another thing to a different client. So her question is, do you think products make it more likely that they'll reach out for a customized proposal? I assume by product, she means like a productized service.
Yeah. I think it can. I think that this is one of those scenarios where I'd be like questioning whether the client's coming to you with the solution they think they need, or if you have the solution the client needs and they need to lean on you as the expert to make it happen, because like, um, and again, it goes back to that pie chart concept where you don't have to stop these custom engagements. If you have a dream client come through your door and they want long form content marketing on a custom basis, like by all means do that for them. Like live your dream and like get that logo on your site or whatever. But you can have a productized offering where there's a long form content. I don't want to use the word template because like content marketing
Yeah.
is one of those things where I feel like the individual article level, like you're trying to achieve a specific result with that piece. And there's certain things that maybe the algorithm or the reader preferences or whatever are trying to tell you. And then you're balancing like the client itself and the products they offer, and you're trying to layer those in thoughtfully or whatever. So inside of that piece, there is like a custom component. But in terms of like, putting a cap on the number of words that those are, or a turnaround time or something like that, like I think there are definitely pieces you can productize. And so if that is like a portion of your overall revenue and the custom engagements are a smaller portion, that's probably a
Mhm.
healthy balance to have. And that way, if one of those custom clients churns and they were one of your whales because they're paying you more, which they should be paying you more if you're doing custom work for them, then you have this like productized subscription based type of thing to fall back on. You got like a safety net there until you go find your next whale.
Yeah. One other way that I might interpret this question, and by the way, Heather, if you're still with us, feel free to clarify. Uh, James, if I put on my site, I have these three packages, A, B, and C. A includes this, B includes this, C includes this. Uh, is that going to discourage people who maybe don't fit into any of those boxes from reaching out? And I guess, is that good or bad?
I think it depends how you present it, right? So some people choose to present themselves if they're really coming at from a position of abundance, a position of strength, a position of confidence, and they just want you to take it or leave it. That's all they put on their website. You will often see people do kind of a 2 or 3 tier model, 2 or 3 package model, and then right under that, kind of full width, they'll say, "Need a custom quote? Reach out."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it's like, and that's a software play. If you look at in a lot of ways, the software industry from a marketing perspective is 10 years ahead of services or e-commerce. They've just figured it. I don't know why they move faster. They had more resources, whatever. But like I'd steal so much from software and apply it to services because it just works, right? So it's like here are 3 packages that you could choose from. Here are the list of deliverables inside of those 3 packages. If you want something above and beyond, or if you want higher volume or something like that, reach out for a custom quote and I'll be happy to do that for you. And you're free to say no to it. And I'm free to say no to what, you know what I mean? Like based on the budget that you have or whatever. So I think it can actually, you know, if you have a website where there's no pricing and there's just a contact form and everything's totally ambiguous, right? Let's put it all the way on the other side of the spectrum. People are probably leaving because they're like, I don't want to get on the phone with him or her. You know, like I don't want to get on the
Just
phone
to
with
find out how
Heather.
much this is. Yeah.
Just to have an open-ended conversation about like how we could possibly work together. And then she's going to go away for a week and send me a quote that's way too much. I'm not going to be able to afford it or whatever. Like nobody wants to do that, right? So you give them something, but I love giving them like behind door number 2 is like, if one of these 3 solutions doesn't perfectly align with what you think you need, then reach out to me and I'll be happy to talk about a custom engagement. But then they have some frame of reference for like, okay, here's what she typically can do as deliverables. Here's what her typical prices are. They range from X to Y. You know, maybe mine will be a little bit more because it's custom, but like that feels reasonable within reach for me or whatever. So I think it can actually drive more conversations compared to the totally open-ended website where everything's just kind of left in the dark and hidden behind closed doors.
Oh, I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it. All right, man. We are at the hour, so we're going to wrap things up here. First of all, James, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. This was an extremely valuable and insightful conversation. Couple things I'm going to leave you with here on the stream. First of all, if you have not already taken advantage of James's generous offer, go over to productizeandscale.com/optimist. Once again, you're going to get access to a free sort of self-assessment like worksheet. You can sort of work through some of the challenges that your business is facing and see if productization might potentially help alleviate some of those challenges. In addition to that, James is also offering a free coaching call for anybody who fills out that form. And I believe you don't have to put in an email. So you can just grab that form, fill it out,
Yep.
see if it seems valuable to you, and then grab some of James's time to discuss in more detail. Once again, the productizeandscale.com website is where you're going to find all kinds of content from James, the course, the Productize and Scale course, the newsletter, all that good stuff. Definitely check that out. And finally, one last time I will mention middle of the funnel Mofu. This is a preview of our monthly live Q&As that we host every single month inside Mofu, built for entrepreneurs, business owners, agencies, solopreneurs, whatever you want to call yourself. If you're trying to build and grow a business, Mofu is going to provide all kinds of resources and content that's going to help you get to the next level. So we'd love to have you join us there, and you will get access to that Productize and Scale course as a member. Once again, James, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge. It's been great.
Yes, sir. And you folks don't know, but Tyler and I worked on this for like a year, and it was all my fault that it had to keep getting bumped back and bumped back. So, Tyler, thank you for your patience, your understanding, your grace, and for giving me the platform to come in and talk to everybody. And please go join Mofu. I'm in there. So, if nothing else, you can DM me with all the questions that we didn't get to today, and I'll be happy to help serve you in that capacity as well. So, go join.
Appreciate that, James. And yeah, it was worth the wait, man. I'm glad we got a chance to connect. And thanks again for your time.
Awesome.
Thanks, y'all. Cheers.